Chapter 6 Entering the City. I've never seen you give such a high rating to your boys. Wang Xiantian sighed, his eyes pierced through the void and gave Xin Xiaobai a deep look. Looks like he's very special. There's so much nonsense. Li Yi gave Wang Xiantian a blank look. Where are you going now? The plan has been made. Go directly to the old guys in the ghost universe. Wang Xiantian stared at the direction of the Dragon Soul Galaxy. His divine consciousness collided with the old man before through the endless void. Okay. Li Yi's brows were slightly wrinkled, his body was constantly surging with terrifying spiritual energy, and the surrounding void was constantly fluctuating, and there were faint signs of collapse. They're here. The old man opened his blood-red eyes and slowly got up. Several old figures with extremely terrifying aura next to the old man also stood up. For the sake of the sixth prince, we must win this time. The old man's blood-red eyes gradually turned dark red. Like a dark red black hole, people have a sense of fear that devours everything. Yes. The people around replied respectfully. Tianchang Academy? I will definitely go. Xin Xiaobai recalled the teacher's words just now, clenching his hands and looking up at the bright sky. Xin Xiaobai held his head high and walked towards Lingkong village with confident steps he had never had before. He buried his relatives one by one for safety, but there was one thing left to do. Xin Xiaobai walked slowly on the way home, which he had been on for 15 years. Today's Lingkong village is no longer his home. He looked at the familiar scenery around him, the towering trees along the edge. The heart is no longer as cheerful as before, only sighs remain in the heart. Xin Xiaobai walked to the entrance of the village and watched the dilapidated plaque fall to the ground. The leaves blown by the wind fell on the snowy ground, but it was only one day. Lingkong village is like an unmanned village. Xin Xiaobai picked up the plaque on the ground with his sai and silently placed it in the original place. He picked up the long-standing broom with his right hand and gently swept the fallen leaves on the snow. Xin Xiaobai worked hard to restore Lingkong village to its original appearance, and worked hard to clean the bloodstains on the yard at home. The day passed quickly. Standing at the entrance of the village, Xin Xiaobai took a deep breath, looked at the brand new plaque at the entrance of the village, and said to himself, I don't know if there will be a next time. Will I be able to see what it looks like when I come back next time? Xin Xiaobai turned and left, when he was about to lose sight of the entrance to the village. Xin Xiaobai finally looked back at this place where he raised him for 15 years. The infinite reluctance and nostalgia are gone after this turn, and there are only expectations for the future. Qi Xuanqing now has a saying that there are 8 schools, but there were only 8 schools before one appeared. The emergence of Zhuangxingmen broke the situation of 8 families ruling the entire Kixhuangxing, and formed a new pattern of Super 8 strong. At this moment, there was an incident from Zhuangxingmen that shocked the 8 families. Zhuangxingmen Saint Sun Chen was seriously injured in an accident and announced to retreat. The Xuanqing sect will start recruiting disciples again 3 days later. There were different opinions for a while. Some said that the 8 families shot and injured Chenin, and some said that Chenin was injured by the monsters in the Sirius Mountains. Others say that Chenin was accidentally injured while practicing. There are even rumors that Chenin may not survive for 2 months. Therefore, it is urgent to recruit disciples in order to find a talented person and cultivate them to replace Chenin. Although there are many sayings, there is no doubt that Chenin must be injured. And it is a very serious injury, otherwise Zhuangxingmen will not break the iron rule of only recruiting disciples once a year. When the 8 families heard the news, they were all about to move. Attempting to provoke a battle for the Holy Son, taking advantage of Chen En's serious illness, he won the position of the Holy Son of Zhuangxingmen. Compete for the precious places granted by the Central Temple. At the foot of the outer edge of the Heavenly Wolf Mountains, an extremely embarrassed figure appeared. Her shoulder-length hair was full of greasy and muddy stains, and she looked like a beggar with plain clothes and messy hair. But his plain clothes could not hide his handsome face with clear lines, full of confidence. The clean and deep eyes are like stars shining in the world. This person is Shinshiobai, who left Lingkong village. He walked for several days and nights in the heavenly Wolf Mountain range and bumped into several third-order monsters. Being chased by monsters, he exhausted all his strength and finally left the serious mountains. Ah! Shinshiobai shouted towards the sky, cleaning up a few fallen leaves from his hair and tidying up his messy hair. Nima, don't give me a map before I leave. I turn around here several times before I come out. Not far outside the Tianlang Mountains is the first city of Kixwangsing, Xuanqing City. The reason why it is called Xuanqing City is naturally because this city is the seat of Xuanxingmen, the most powerful force in Kixwangsing. At this moment, at the gate of Xuanqing City, a young man was carrying a flaming sword and riding a flaming horse galloping past. He entered Xuanqing City without any inspection. Who is this man? Why doesn't he want to be checked, but we do? Be quiet, he is young Master Zhang Yan of the Zhang family in Xuanqing City. You think he is a little scum like us? The people who were queuing for inspection at the gate of the city were talking a lot, and they were all talking about who the person who had just entered was. And Shinshiobai was at the end of the queue, waiting to be checked to enter Xuanqing City. Xuanqing City has never required inspection to enter before, but since Xuanxingmen's holy son was seriously injured on his own site, Xuanxingmen ordered everyone who entered the city to be inspected. Have you heard? Xuanxingmen will open again tomorrow to recruit disciples. Are you going? What am I going to do? People have such high requirements, the 8th stage body tempering state under the age of 16. Basically, only those disciples of the big family have this strength. Yes, Xuanxingmen's requirements this time are much higher than usual. I don't know what this Xuanxingmen is for. Well, I guess there should be very few people to sign up this time. This time the requirements are a little too high. The people in line whispered, and Shinshiobai heard these words clearly. At this moment, Shinshiobai was thinking, was all this arranged by his teacher? As soon as he left the Xuanxingmen of the village, he broke the iron rule of only recruiting disciples once a year, and the age and realm restrictions were just stuck. Is this a coincidence or fate? This big brother. Shinshiobai patted the middle-aged man in front of him. Excuse me, where will Xuanxingmen recruit people tomorrow? Shinshiobai knew nothing about Xuanqing City. Although he learned a lot from the book written by his grandfather Shinchin, it was still a book, not reality. Huh? The man turned around and saw Shinshiobai, who looked like a beggar, with a look of disgust on his face, and said, "Why are you a beggar asking this? Go away." Beggar? Shinshiobai looked at his clothes and smiled helplessly. He really looks like a beggar. Brother, can you tell me where Xuanxingmen recruits disciples? I want to go. Just you? The middle-aged man looked surprised, and then burst out laughing. Where do you think Xuanxingmen is? Would you want a beggar like you? A beggar wants to enter the Xuanqing gate, ha ha ha. The people in the queue all burst into laughter, looking at Shinshiobai with disdain in their eyes. Shinshiobai ignored these mocking people, still standing in the team, preparing to enter Xuanqing City. Don't beggars enter the Xuanxingmen, right? The middle-aged man looked down on Shinshiobai with a look of contempt. You don't have to worry about this, uncle. Shinshiobai said flatly. Don't understand what I mean? The middle-aged man shook his head slightly. Shinshiobai looked at the middle-aged man and said, What does this uncle mean? I understand what I mean. The middle-aged man walked slowly to Shinshiobai, and suddenly kicked Shinshiobai. Xuanxingmen don't want beggars. Shinshiobai immediately blocked the middle-aged man's kick and knocked him back with a punch. Uncle, let's do it now, okay? Humph. The middle-aged man said softly and put on his clothes. How dare beggars resist? The middle-aged man surged the spiritual power in his body and threw a punch again. It's actually a body-quenching powerhouse. Everyone was surprised when they saw his strong aura. Although the middle-aged man looked down on a beggar, the crowd didn't say anything. What does a beggar have to do with them? Humph. Shinshiyobai's eyes narrowed, and the dull eyes instantly turned into sharp swords. Shinshiyobai raised his hand to block the middle-aged man's punch, and said coldly, "Uncle is unjust, don't blame me for not doing anything serious." After Shinshiyobai finished speaking, violent spiritual energy emerged from his body and gathered in his right fist. A punch broke the middle-aged man's right hand and kicked it away with a kick. Ah! The middle-aged man clasped his right arm with his left hand and fell to the ground, crying in pain. This beggar actually has 2 strokes, he won't really come to join the Zhuangxingmen, right? Everyone was shocked when they saw Shinshiyobai punching a strong body-tempering realm. The soldiers in charge of inspection at the city gate immediately surrounded him and looked at Shinshiyobai seriously. "Don't you know that private fighting is prohibited in Xuanqing City?" the leading soldier spoke. "He made the first move, I'm just self-defense," Shinshiyobai said. The leading soldier looked at Shinshiyobai, who looked like a beggar, and walked to the middle-aged man again, bowing his head. Not knowing what the middle-aged man said to the soldier stood up and walked straight to Shinshiyobai. "You fought privately and injured people. According to the laws of Xuanqing City, come with us." The soldiers at the head gave orders, and the surrounding soldiers also surrounded Shinshiyobai. "This lord, it was he who moved first. Didn't you see it?" Shinshiyobai defended. "Bold," the soldier yelled, "dare to refute us, it's against you. This beggar just doesn't know how high the sky is, and even the guards of Xuanqing City dare to contradict. A beggar is a beggar. There is no vision at all." The people around saw that Shinshiyobai even contradicted the guards of Xuanqing City. It seems that this beggar is going to suffer. Injuring someone privately, but you will be imprisoned. But well. The soldier whispered in front of Shinshiyobai's ears, "Give me something valuable, and I can pretend I didn't see it." The soldiers also compared gestures with their hands, implying Shinshiyobai. "Sir, do you think I look like a rich man?" Shinshiyobai replied in a low voice. "I don't know if the soldiers are blind or what's going on. How can someone who looks like a beggar have money?" "Humph." The soldier snorted coldly. "Then come with us." The soldier waved his hand, and the soldier behind him was eager to try, ready to take down Shinshiyobai. A carriage came at a gallop and stopped beside Shinshiyobai. "Wait." A voice came from the carriage that had just arrived, and a handsome young man stepped out of the carriage. Standing in front of Shinshiyobai and looking at him. "This young master, what's the matter with you?" The soldier saw that the person who came was beautifully dressed, like a young child of a big family. So a pleasing look. "I'll take care of his business, let's go." The boy threw out a bag. "Yo!" The soldier flipped the bag and found it was full. Immediately changed his face. "This young man is completely self-defense. Of course we have to enforce the law impartially. Go." The soldier waved his hand, signaling the soldier behind him to return to the original place. As for the middle-aged man, he was pulled aside by the soldiers and ignored. "Thank you." Shinshiyobai bowed slightly towards the young man. "You're pretty good, but your arm was broken by your fist at the 5th stage of body quenching." The young man nodded slightly and asked, "How old is it?" 15. Shinshiyobai said. "At the age of 15, you can easily defeat a person in the 5th stage of body tempering. It seems that you really came to join the Zhuangxingmen," the young man said. "Of course." Shinshiyobai nodded affirmatively. "One piece?" The young man stepped into the carriage and looked back at Shinshiyobai. "No." Shinshiyobai looked at the dirty clothes and greasy and stained hair. He was afraid of soiling the youth's carriage. "I don't care about that." The young man seemed to see what Shinshiyobai cared about. "Then I'm welcome." Shinshiyobai showed a smile that he hadn't seen for a long time, jumped onto the carriage, and sat in. He has stayed in Lingkong village for 15 years and has never gone out. This is also the first time he has come to the outside world. He is curious about everything. Go. The young man stepped into the carriage and ordered, and the carriage immediately started and ran towards Xuanqing City.